Joining me now here in the studio is the former co-leader of the Syrian Kurdish party, the PYD, Salih Muslim. Thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Thank you very much.
Do you have a deal on military cooperation in Afrin with the Syrian government?
No, there is no deal yet, but there is a dialogue, maybe with some mediation by the Russians and the others. Still, they haven't reached any deal yet. We are just waiting for the announcement by them if they have done anything.
Well, it seems as if Syrian state media, at least, has announced a deal. Why do you think that they have gone ahead with that announcement if there's not currently a deal on the table?
Well, it's rumors only. Actually, there is nothing happened yet.
They say that forces are moving. Forces are moving toward Afrin.
Well, even they are saying forces. Which forces? We just believe in the Syrian, army and the Syrian military service, but not the pro-Syrian like Iranians or Hezbollah or the others. They are not welcome to our areas.
So a deal, though, however, is progressing, and you seem to be optimistic that there will indeed be a deal in the end. What has been discussed? Have there been preconditions of the Assad regime, and what might those preconditions have been? What do they want from you?
Now, actually, there is no deal at the political-wise. Mainly, it's military-wise, because now we have priorities. Now, as you know, the Turkish government is occupying a part of Syria, which is in Shahba, north of Syria, and they are trying to occupy the Afrin also. And they have their policies to make demographic changes and so on. So the priority is to protect the sovereignty of Syria, and this is the government's duty to do it now. It's their mission. And we are, of course, from the beginning, from the beginning of the Syrian revolution, we stated all the time, we are part of Syria, we have to protect the Syrian territory, and we are, not looking for any separation or any different ways. All we are trying to do to get a democratic Syria for all the components, including the Kurdish people and the others. And mainly they are saying Kurdish forces. Actually, it's not Kurdish forces, it's democratic Syrian forces, which include the Kurds, the Arabs, and all the components over there in north of Syria. And now even the forces are fighting in Afrin. All the components are sharing it. It's not only the Kurds. So everybody is sharing to protect their homes, their lands, their villages. So this is the case. And the priority is to protect this territory of Syria.
So you say it's on the military level, but of course we know that there isn't such a difference between the political and the military level, that the two really go hand in hand at the end of the day. Ultimately, though, if the Assad regime, if the military forces were to step in and aid, the YPG and the PYD, the Kurds there in Syria, aren't you concerned ultimately about allying yourself with a regime which has spent much of the past 7 years massacring its own people?
Yeah, the alliance could be for protection of Syrian territory. It's all right. But, in Syria, we have to agree to...
And by Syrian territory, you mean Afrin?
Yeah, Afrin and all the other areas also, north of Syria. We are talking about Shahba area, for example, is occupied by Turkish military. Already there in Elbab, in Jarablus, in Azaz, and all these areas should be protected. Even the Turkish army should get out of these areas. So we are concerned about this one. Protecting of the Syrian territory is the priority now. And then we can look for a political solution, how to live in Syria, democratic Syria, but at any time, Syria cannot return to the time before 2011. Despotic regime, Marxist regime, it could not be. It should be a new Syria, for democratic, for everybody. And we are part of it.
If Afrin is Syrian territory,
yes.
We know, of course, that the Kurds are currently governing that area. Would it be an option for you that the Syrian regime would step in and be the administration in that area in exchange for some sort of deal?
It should be. If you are talking about the democratic Syria, of course we have a project for that. which Syria should be decentralized, because now we are talking about Sunnis, we are talking about the Alawis, the Durzis, the Yazidis, the Christians, Muslims, and ethnically we are talking about the Arabs, the Kurds, the Armenian, Turkmens. So how you can keep all those diversities all together? It should be democratic way. Otherwise, you cannot keep them. If you are talking about the unity of the Syrian territory, it should be all of those. It should be in democratic system, which we are saying, decentralized Syria. It means Afrin and the other places, not only Afrin, the other places also, they should have democratic administration for each other to live together, and the people should decide. So in this stage, when we are talking about the protection of the Syria, protecting the Syria, it means the priority to defend Syrian land, not to be occupied by the other forces.
You mentioned a democratic system. You mentioned the ability for the people to decide who are currently living there. You mentioned people from various different backgrounds, from various different areas. We know that you have been fighting against the Turks, and which you say are authoritarian, which are not democratic according to your own definition. But doesn't your government also have authoritarian tendencies as well? Because, I mean, we have reports, for example, of forced recruitment, forced conscription, and restrictions on press freedom, just to name a few.
Do you mean in the Kurdish areas or
Correct,
in
yes.
the north of Syria? No, it's not authoritarian, because we have institutions, everybody is sharing, and we have elections for the maybe communes, and then there were local elections, and we were just going to make the elections for all the area also. So it's democratic way, and everybody is sharing in it. So it's a democratic system, and even for gender equality, for example, is not available in Syria and other areas. What we are trying to build is a really democratic system, and I think it could be an example for all of Syria. And it's the first time in the Middle East, I mean, what we are trying to establish over there, institutions, democratic institutions, grassroots democracy for everybody is sharing in it. So this is the system we are trying to establish.
And that democratic system, you actually have a name for it. We just want to mention it for our viewers. It's called democratic confederalism or democratic self-administration.
That's right, yes.
It's one that you talk about a lot. But, you know, to that point,
yes.
We have reports that your party, the
Yes.
PYD, does not allow other political parties to operate in the areas that you control. I just want to bring in this quote from Human Rights Watch and then get you to respond to it, because this is part of Human Rights Watch's World Report 2018. This is what they said about your party. They said the security forces in PYD-controlled areas conducted a series of raids to close opposing political parties' offices and detained and harassed members of the political opposition and activists. Most were detained without any charges brought against them. Why do you not allow other political parties? This doesn't sound like democratic confederalism.
It's not true. We have a law for parties to establish parties, and there is now, at this moment, about 22 parties, which they are all already, they have permission and they are active in the area, different parties. But there is some parties located in Turkey mainly, especially their heads, and trying to do without permission. They are trying to activate, to be active without any permission, because they don't want to recognize the system over there. So this is different. We don't have parties. I mean, we have a law of parties. It's very easy. It's very democratic. It's need only 100 members to get the permission for political work. That's all. And already we have 22 parties, and everybody is allowed to go and see them. It's not PYD. I mean, PYD is one of those parties. And we were the first party who applied to get the permission for working political activities.
I'd like to just ask you, Turkey says that the YPG and that the PYD, that these are terrorist organizations. They say that they are no different from the PKK, which we know that many governments around the world have classified as a terrorist organization. The links are strong, aren't they?
No, it's not true.
But weren't you yourself, though, once with the PKK?
No, I wasn't with. I am civilian. I am engineer. I worked in Saudi Arabia, and I was an engineer in engineering.
Why is it that then
I have nothing to do with it.
Why is it then that, for example, the Atlantic Council, they say that the YPG's casualty data confirms that Kurds from Turkey total nearly half of the YPG's self-reported casualties between 2013 and 2016. The implication there is that those are coming from the PKK,
no? We have, actually, I mean, we have some members. They were Syrian, Kurdish Syrian. They were among the PKK. And then when the Syrian conflict started, they came back to defend their families. And they are Syrian, they are Kurds. So they are not the PKK anymore. And we have, I mean, many people, because, you know, sympathy for Mr. Öcalan. He was in Syria for 20 years. And he is a population not only in Syria, in all parts of Kurdistan. So this is something different. And to have organic relations with the PKK is different. And we don't see PKK as a terrorist organization. But what Turkey is saying is trying, I mean, is that they just, account everybody who looking for the democratic rights for the Kurdish people as a terrorist. And they want to connect them with the PKK, which is not true.
I would just like to look forward for a minute before we go, because, you know, everyone recognizes the very important role that the Kurds in Syria played in fighting the so-called Islamic State, supported by the United States, we have to mention.
That's right, yes.
Turkey says that it is going to push the YPG out of Manbij and then all the way back to the Iraqi border. That is threatening the system that you have in place right now, that is threatening the territory that you are currently governing. Are you sure that your American allies are going to continue to support you?
Well, the question is not, Turkey is just dreaming to do it, because we have defeated, Daesh, which was an instrument of Turkey to maybe implement their plans, their dreams, because they are still thinking of Misaki Milli. And we defeated, as the Kurdish people, YPG and YPJ, they have defeated Daesh, the Turkish instruments, and we are depending on ourselves, in our people, in our organization. We are not depending on anybody. We don't want anybody to fight instead of us. If we have any coordination or help, or even with the international alliance against the terror, is still valid, and they are doing their job, and perfect they are doing, in Raqqa, in Deir ez-Zor, and the others. And these attacks in Afrin is kind of support for Daesh, because Daesh is being defeated in Deir ez-Zor. So it's a kind of relief, to open another front with the Kurdish people. And many fighters, they were fighting in Deir ez-Zor, now they withdrawn to Afrin to defend their families over there. So it's kind of support of Daesh, and Turkey was supporting them. Depending on the international alliance, yes, we have, as armed forces, we have some kind of agreements with them, and Daesh is not going to be finished easily. And there was many statements by the American, responsible people. They are saying they are not going to withdraw from Manbij, from the areas. So it means it's not easy.
Not easy, indeed.
For Turkey.
That is
for Turkey, it's
certainly
not easy to go to the border or to anywhere they like. They are just dreaming, I think.
We want to thank you so much for joining us this evening to talk a little bit about the shifting situation there in Syria. We very much appreciate it. Former co-leader of the Syrian Kurdish party, the PYD, Salih Muslim. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Bye.